Welcome to the GrayHawk DJC podcast. In today's podcast, we talk with Steve Stewart. Steve is the owner of Southern Comfort Mechanical, an AC repair and installation company located in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Not too bad, thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome to the show, and thank you for doing this. I know we've never met before, so this is purely organic, which is awesome. But we usually start off these conversations with tell us a little bit about where you're from, your background, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, will do. I'll give you the 2-minute version and probe away where you want to go deeper. So, as you can tell from the accent, I'm not from Texas. I grew up in Northern Ireland, just north of Belfast.
Okay.
From there wasn't a lot of opportunity when I left school. So I would say got into engineering and studied engineering. Then whenever I got to a certain level, I wanted to get a degree, and that's where I moved over to Liverpool in England. Finished up my education there. Then from there, I worked a summer in a power station for National Power Generator, so I got to see the inside of power station and how electricity gets made. Unless there's problems, it's not very exciting.
Where did you get your first job?
My first job was way back whenever I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
A friend and I had a wood cutting company, as we called it. We would chop up logs and sell those to the neighbors. So that was my first foray into business back whenever I was younger.
So that's interesting. Tell us about that. What made you and your friend get into that business, I guess?
I'm not sure what the genesis was. It's so long ago. We lived close to a forest or a woodland, so there was trees and logs around. People had open fireplaces, burnt coal and logs and lignite, which rotted trees before they turn into coal. So that's where we started up our own company. So I'm guessing that had a genesis somewhere in the background of me wanting to have my own business one day.
Okay, so you would literally go to the woods, cut down, chop trees or logs, or
it would be stuff that was lying around on the ground. Yeah,
and you would give them to people, and they would give you money for that.
Give us some money for it. I think it was like 2 cents a log or something back then. So yeah.
Were you literally knocking on doors, just house to house?
I'm trying to remember. I think our parents wanted some stuff. We had wheelbarrows full of it, and then I think neighbors just started asking, "Hey, can you get some of that for us?" So I think that's where the genesis was back in the day.
Oh, that's awesome. So you go to Liverpool to study engineering, and then what's your first job out of college, I guess?
First job out of that was a company called Lucas Industries, one of those British multinational conglomerates based in the UK. So my first role with them was in a quality department with the aerospace group making power generation units. So I spent 6 months there, learning about quality and some of the defects that were flying around in the sky.
Okay, wow. So how long were you working for companies for?
I would say my first couple of years was 6-month rotation. So I would say I went from aerospace into automotive. Working on a logistics department was the second one. Third one was a factory redesign, and then the fourth one was over in the US making keypads for telephones and touchscreens back whenever they were the size of a brick.
Okay.
And then back to the UK again to work on fuel injectors.
What decade was this? What time?
That was back in the very early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going back and forth, you're learning about different departments of whatever field you're in, right?
In manufacturing, yeah.
And then and you're in your early 20s at this time, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So what made you, how'd you end up in the U.S. then, I guess? Yeah.
I ended up in the U.S., so from that, that Lucas group that I was working for at the time, I then got the opportunity to go and work for Toyota in the UK. So I would say they call it the supplier parts tracking team. So basically that role is you have an area of the vehicle. Mine was the exterior, so the glass, the door mirrors, door handles. Get that from the drawing board into production. So production starts on this date, 2 years, go make it happen. So working with the suppliers and the internal departments to make sure things got, I would say, produced for each of the trials, visiting suppliers to make sure that they were following the plan and where they were said they would be, and then if they had problems with engineering or logistics, facilitating with QA, production control to get those issues resolved. So with that, I learned the Toyota production system and how things worked at Toyota. From there, that gave me that skill set of and knowledge on lean, as a lot of people call it. That then got an opportunity to move to the US to work for a consulting company called McKinsey and Company.
Okay.
They were setting up an operations group, or had just set it up. So I got an offer, moved to Cleveland, take it or leave it. So I moved to Cleveland and moved my family over.
So did you know anyone in the US when you came over?
No.
So it was just, hey, family, we're coming to the United States.
Yep, that was it.
How did your family react?
They were, I'd say mixed reactions, the change or whatever, but hey, great opportunity. Let's go see what happens. Worst case, we can move back again.
Okay. Did you have any, how do I say this nicely, idea the reputation Cleveland has?
I would say not. Before we moved under, there was some stuff, so that say the internet was in its infancy and so forth, or else I didn't know how to use it back then. But yeah, all of the stories of the lake catching fire and things like that came out of the woodwork. Once we were there. But Cleveland's a great place. It's a well-kept secret.
Right. So just the secret. I'm from Ohio, Cincinnati, which is completely separate from Cleveland, obviously, but I understand Ohio is a well-kept secret, and people don't realize that. So how long you were in Cleveland for, I guess?
I was in Cleveland then, I believe, 5 years. Traveling back and forwards, a lot of the time was jumping on a plane on Sunday night, Monday morning, flying off to go see clients, and then come back Thursday, Friday. Okay.
What was your role at what was the company?
I was a consultant.
Okay.
And then I would say later on I was an engagement manager, which is leading the team.
Mm-hmm. And so you did that, you said, for 5 years?
Yeah, I did that for 5 years, and then I moved over to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and became a plant manager. So that was something else that was on my list of things that I wanted to achieve. I wanted to be a plant manager, and I got that opportunity with Consolidated Container, blow molding plants, making water bottles, juice bottles, things like that.
Okay. And so you're still way off from the whole AC repair thing.
Yep.
Okay.
So from there, whatever, it turned out it was a private equity company or private equity owned. I would say I enjoyed the turnarounds from that. When things are, let's say, distressed or broken, you can make lots of improvements in fairly quickly. You can see the impact of that. So that side was enjoyable, but being in the trenches or whatever, there was pressure on hitting the numbers and things flowing down from, let's say, on high. So I said, this turnaround stuff is good, but I want to be on the other side of the equation.
Right.
With the private equity company doing it to make it, a bit more fun and a bit more control and so forth. So I would say I interviewed around different private equity companies, and there was one that was here in Dallas that was getting set up with Highland Capital. So that's where I moved the family down here to Dallas. Okay. And from there was back on a plane again, traveling.
So you're a consultant again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my title was more operating partner, so I would say I would be on the ground working with management teams in either consulting, sitting on boards, or some interim management roles as well. So that gave me a chance to do, SVP of operations, COO, CEO. So things, fun titles like that.
Right. So what year did you end up come to Texas from, I guess?
It was back in 2007.
Okay. All right. So how long were you there for in that role, I guess?
I was there for 10 years, to the dot, practically.
Okay.
So during that time, I was say, working in businesses, say, they were long weeks and all the rest of it. But I got to the point where I wanted to get off the road. So my kids were growing up, so I wanted to get to spend some time with them before they disappeared to do their own thing.
Right.
And get to know my wife before it was just her and I staring across an empty table.
Sure.
So that's where I started looking around for a business to buy. Realized that getting into the trades, either plumbing or HVAC, was attractive. I had some really poor service in the different homes that I'd owned with AC. So that's where I want to build a better experience for the customer in terms of customer service up front, so you can get a hold of someone, have professional technicians that you deal with that listen to you, give you options,
right,
and then quality work on the back end. So that was part of that big driver. Once I'd locked in on sort of getting into the trades, then narrowed it down onto the HVAC front, and then just was searching for different things as they came up, basically on the internet, researching those, see if there was a fit, what was there, and then this was the one that worked out.
So this was already in place, and you guys purchased this company?
Yes. So okay. I purchased this back in the middle of 2017.
Okay. May I ask how you raised the funds for that, or?
I would say some of it was from savings. The other part was through finance, and the primarily through the Small Business Association.
Okay, so you took a loan out, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, all right. How'd you feel now that so you had to quit your job, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You took over full time. You have a loan out. You have family support. What was that first feeling like that when you first started?
It's I'm going to say uncomfortable. It's okay. I would say you've gone from being responsible and with fiduciary responsibility for investors' money. By the end of the day, there's a bit more whenever it's your head on the line or whatever, that you got to keep everything in the air, make sure that money's coming in faster than it's going out, and keeping everything balanced and moving.
Okay. And when you came in, there was already a staff in place and employees here?
Yes.
Okay. So it was a running business that you took over, and was there any issues with the new boss coming in, or how did that go, I guess? I
would say probably the big surprise for me was people were very attached to whoever owns their HVAC company, whoever. Right. So prior owners, Jason and Laurie, whoever, people were very affiliated with them, whoever, and were asked a lot of questions, and were sort of, they still ask for them and come up, so that they had deep roots with the clients, and people loved them a lot. Right.
So tell me how that first year was like for you. What was the biggest, any surprises, challenges that you faced?
I'm going to say there was plenty, never a dull moment. So to say, part of that was just trying to keep up with, I would say, the volume coming in. So whenever it's hot in Texas, there's not enough AC technicians to get out there. So trying to keep, I would say, clients happy, learn the business as well as I could or whatever. So not having, say, prior HVAC experience before jumping into it. I was picking up the terminology. At that point, everything was paper based, so there was a lot of people moving through the office, so
Right.
staying on track of stuff, getting parts ordered, making sure we knew where they were at, not getting lost. So there was, just that, volume of things to wrap your head around. The other big thing was I was expecting it, but I don't think you're ever ready for it. So you have a team or an executive team that you're working with. So you have CFOs, accounting departments, you have IT departments. So you can spec out, I have a problem with this. Can you help me solve it? IT people would do their magic, CFOs would do their magic. Whenever you're wearing all of those hats, it's easy to come up with lots of ideas and lists of things to do. Then the flip side is you got to turn around and go execute them. So there was a lot of long days and nights, to get things off the to-do list, to take care of the day-to-day, and then work on those other things to try and improve things.
Right. How about managing employees and people? Was that ever a challenge here when you took over?
I would say there's always employee challenges. I'd say anybody that says there's not are, we'll say, supreme leaders that I need to learn a bunch from, but people are people, and there's always something that comes up or whatever. So over time we just grow in the team and evolved.
How many team members do you have right now?
At the moment there's 9 of us.
Okay, and are they all technicians or do you have staff?
I see there are, there are 2 staff, and that one's an office manager that answers the phone and does the dispatch, helps me out with parts ordering. The other is Luis, who is the field supervisor, so he's the point of contact for the technicians and helps out in the field. Right.
And how do you guys drive customers, you think? Is it word of mouth right now? Do you guys do any advertising?
I'm going to say it's a blend from what I've found. So always trying to figure out what the right magic is that makes the phone ring. At the end of the day, I think it's a blend of it. So I would say, word of mouth is part of that. I'm never quite sure how big a part of it, but it's important. The other is building up Google reviews. I noticed over the years as we've built up our Google reviews, that's important. I'm not sure if it's the driving factor, but I think with the HVAC industry, or maybe contractors in general, people like to do some background and see who's about to come into their home. So I believe people may see us on Facebook and then go check us out on what are your Google reviews like, and then go look at another Yelp or another social media to sort of triangulate and see, is it consistent story and theme across the board. So I'm never 100% sure where people pick us up and what's that, we'll say, tipping point.
Right.
Is it the website? Is it the Google reviews? So I think it's all of that combined together. Advertising wise, we do Facebook advertising, we do some publications, and we do some other digital ads, and then we'll say we're always looking for it and running experiments. So we've got Craigslist, where we've got some ads running on that at the minute to see if that works. I've been playing a little bit with next door ads, still not sure if they're driving anything. So we're lucky enough that we've gone, I'll call it digital, with the operating system that we have. We got it computerized, so we got away from the truckloads of people that were moving around from the field and inside the office. But with that's allowed us to put tracking numbers in different places. So, so that's where we'll say although people mention they may have seen us on Yelp, they're coming through a different input phone number, if that makes sense.
Right. So you know exactly where they come from. Right?
in the end where they're coming from, but it's that genesis. Where did they pick us up from?
Right.
I still haven't fully figured that out.
Right. So is it a constant stream of customers now? Is the Dallas market pretty good for you, I guess?
I'm going to say, yes, that the market's good. There's not enough technicians to go around. There is seasonality that comes from the business. So there's, the huge peaks around the extreme weather. So there's not enough technicians in the Metroplex when it's 95 degrees plus. But then whenever the weather goes mild, so up to like 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was mild weather.
Right.
So people can live without it. They can open the windows, things like that. So things slow down to a certain degree, which is where we have our maintenance programs. So there's the spring maintenance and the fall maintenance that we do and offer clients. That's what we call the Comfort Club. So that helps a lot to fill in and level out that workload across those quieter times of the year.
I see. So if someone is thinking about getting into this industry and starting an HVAC company, any tips and advice for them? What to expect? How to get off the ground?
Yeah, I would say one, you either need to be a technician yourself, or we say have a licensed contractor. So one of the things you need, it's a regulated industry. So for the HVAC, you need a contractor's license in order to operate. I know there's a number around the area that are not, we would say, shouldn't be operating as that.
Right.
So that's in the mix. So be prepared for not everyone is playing by the same rules that you are. But you would say, if you want to be legal, you need to make sure you have that license. With that comes a requirement for insurance. I forget what the minimum level, I think it's $1 million per occurrence. So there's that. The other big thing to be aware of is once you start to grow, there is, we'll say, every business owner is suffering from lack of people at the moment. In the HVAC world, skilled technicians are in short supply.
Right.
There's not a huge number of people out there. So similar with plumbing, electricians, any of the trades.
Wow.
There's a skill shortage out there, which I would think, I'm trying to remember the date. It's a couple of years since I have an updated number, but a couple of years ago, the average age of a technician in the US, HVAC, was 42.
Oh, wow.
And
So as a customer or client, you can ask for all this information. Is that correct? Like, show me if you have a license, if you're insured, all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
So whenever things are advertised, there's a thing called the TDLR number, which starts with TACL for the HVAC. It's meant to be on the side of the truck in 2-inch high letters. So all of that's out there, and then technicians should be carrying a card from the state as well,
okay,
which says that the state's certified and giving them their blessing to be in homes.
Can you tell us what kind of qualifications the technician needs? Like how many years of schooling, all that stuff?
I would say they don't need any per se. Anybody could become an HVAC technician.
Okay.
I'd say that the key requirements is, one, can you take the heat? I'm not sure if you've spent any time in attics here in the summer, but for an attic to be 140 degrees and humid is not uncommon in the summer. So if you're up there for any period of time, you're going to feel it. So
right.
After probably 30 minutes, you need to come out of that space and get some water and rehydrate.
Okay.
But I know myself, after 10 or 15 minutes up in that, you're soaking, you're feeling it. So that's from a body point of view, whatever. That's probably the toughest thing, and that's the biggest thing that I've found that takes new people out of the industry. That within 1 or 2 days, it's like, this isn't for me. I thought it was, and And then the flip side is the winter. Are you prepared to be freezing cold or whatever? So as a technician, you need to be in the extremes of we'll say, where the homeowner wants. If they want to be hot, you're going to be cold because the heating's not working, and vice versa in the summer. So that's being able to work with those extremes. Then the next thing is we'll say being able to be technically savvy. So that's mean you don't need to have qualifications and so, but you need to absorb then how does a HVAC work or a heat pump, so you can you can put things together to make them work is sort of that entry level on, we would call the install path. Then after that is once you move into the technician front of being able to troubleshoot or diagnostics. So that's being able to logically think through, okay, at the minute it should be cooling, so this should be happening, this should be happening. Okay, this isn't happening, let's dig in and find out, is this electrical issue, a freon issue? So there's that side of it. So that gets you, for me, about 60% of the way there. The other part then is client service. Can you deal with people? Around the office, how are you? Dealing with the homeowner? Can you communicate? Do you look presentable? That side of the equation then as well.
I see. And then to get certified by the state of Texas, what is usually a technician have to go through? I guess
for technicians, one is just get, authorization by the state, fill in some paperwork, and you can get your technician license. To move then to contractor license, you need to have 4 years certified experience. Then you need to take an exam, or several exams, depending on the type of qualification that you want to get through. So,
what does the state consider certified experience? I guess
I would say that's experience that's signed off by another certified contractor. So it's working under someone that has a license that can certify. Yeah, Steve knows how to do X, Y, and Z, it's signed off, and it could be 3 months here, 2 months here, etc. But then that gets, I would say that paperwork gets submitted to the state, and they go through it in detail.
Okay. Is the testing part, is that every year? Do they have to renew it?
2 parts. One is the initial, I'll call it the big test. So a bit like doing your degree or associate's degree. There's some exams at the end of that. Then there's continuing education. So making sure that it's 8 hours a year, 8 hours or 12 hours. Sorry, I'm pulling a vagueness on that, but each year it's going through that continuing education. Primarily it's around the legal front. Has there been any changes in the law? It makes up a big portion of that continuing education hours to stay current.
Is that initial test expensive for someone to take? Do they have to pay money, I guess? I'm assuming they do.
I'm trying to remember now. It's not mega expensive, but I'm going to say it's in the hundreds of dollars. We'll see. It's an open book test, so I believe there's about $1,000 worth of books of things that need to be studied.
Oh, wow.
You need to cram that into your head.
So it sounds pretty intense, I guess.
It's fairly intense, yeah.
Okay.
So it's like just not anyone is going to get it. There's a fairly high bar to get that contractor's license.
Wow. So do you see people come in and asking just to be an apprentice, kind of, to learn before they take these tests?
Before they take. So there's I would say not many people come in asking about, hey, I want to pass my contractor's exam. Can you help me get there? It's more, it would be people looking for a career opportunity, looking to learn a trade would apply or walk in and look for a position, see if we have anything open to get, on that trade rung or whatever. Once you've learned that trade or whatever, it's like learning to ride a bike. It's with you for life.
Right. So when these guys come in, obviously they're not licensed yet, and they might not have a lot of experience. What are you looking for? What kind of traits are you looking for in them?
I would say, so if someone is would say, straight out of, let's say, high school, or has done another course, worked around for a bit. One is, how are you at the heat? Can you take the heat? And if we can somewhat simulate that a bit. So we have a warehouse role here, so quite often we'll use that as the stepping stone. So can you work in the warehouse? Can you then learn to pick up the parts? So that way you start to learn what a thermal expansion valve is called, what a air filter is like. So you get accustomed to that. Helping out with the different technicians in the field. So go and help install an evaporator coil, which is something that's up in the attic. Go help change out a motor, so that way you start to connect. Okay, I went and picked that up yesterday. I know it's called this. Here's where it goes, and start then to, we'll say, as anchor, anticipate the move of the technician. So you're there with the torches, the wrenches, or whatever. That way you're understanding, and then start to ask, can I do this next bit? That way you're stepping into it. Once you get that rounded out, then we'll move that trainee into right along with another technician full time. With that, the next goal then is to learn how to do a maintenance, an AC maintenance or a heating maintenance, and then once they've got that, they can then start to break off and do some calls by themselves, and then still assist other technicians in the field, whether it's duct cleaning, changing out components, things like that, so they can start building up their troubleshooting experience.
So do you have to do this while they're studying to get the license?
Would say some people are doing that while they're going to school to get I'll call it entry level certification for for the contractor's exam that's on the individual themselves or whatever, that all those years of experience can get accrued towards that and can get signed off.
Right. So you have to have 4 years, you have to take the test, and then afterwards you have to take continuing education every year.
Which is like 8 hours a year, which is minimal. That's nothing at that point.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people might find that interesting to find out if they want to get into this business, because I know that, like you're saying, it's such a good opportunity since there's such a deficient amount of technicians to service, especially DFW. It's growing so much, right? So
if anybody wanted to get, I would more encourage them, rather than setting up your own business, go and work for someone else for that period of time, so you can really learn that technical side, learn the customer skills, learn the details of the different equipment. For example, a Train, a Goodman, a Carrier, a Lennox. On the entry-level units, or single stage as we call them, tell me if I'm using too much jargon, they're similar and operate the same way, but once you get into what we call communicating equipment, which is the variable speed, which has got more electronics in it, that's where they start to differ, and troubleshooting one is different from another.
I see. So if we flip to the customer side, what kind of tips and advice do you give homeowners or business owners about their HVAC units?
I'm going to say it's probably the appliance next to the fridge that gets most neglected in a home. So HVAC, it's like your car. We'll say if you neglect it, don't service, don't change the oil, it's going to break down on you. You're going to have problems. Key thing for homeowners, and that was part of that field I was in. I was lucky enough to move into new homes a couple of times, but there was never any handbook or education on here's what you should do. So, guilty as charged. I have neglected my units, which looking back on it, I could have saved myself probably some brain damage and headache. But key thing is regular filter changes.
Okay.
So that's the number one cause of breakdown.
Okay.
That we get called out for is something that could have been prevented if the filter had been changed. So not everybody knows that they should be changed, or they get forgotten about.
How often do you think?
So for a 1-inch filter, 1-inch thick, that should be changed at least every 3 months.
Okay.
If you got a bunch of pets and kids, that could be a month. That's, as the homeowner, they need to judge that, but change those every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a filter that's 4 inches thick, that's twice a year. That should be changed every 6 months.
Okay.
And if there's a lot of build up and so forth, it can be done before then. So changing the filters regularly is one thing you'll gain. We'll say it'll improve the system. It can breathe then. So that's the big issue with a clogged filter. It restricts the airflow. So then everything has to work harder. Heating time, then things can overheat, crack, or cut out. But what I'd recommend is getting a biannual maintenance. So once a year, having your AC checked out, make sure that it's working properly. And then on the winter side, is make sure your heating's working properly. So the heating is more important to home safety than the AC.
Okay.
AC will keep you warm and stop you overheating. So there's a safety side there. On the heating side, if you have a furnace, that's a controlled fire that you have inside your home. So that's where carbon monoxide can come out of the woodwork. So heat exchangers can rust, put holes in them. The flue pipe that transmits the exhaust gas out through the roof can fall off, rust, develop holes. So you can be having carbon monoxide dumped into your home. So waking up dead is never a good start to the day for anybody. So
right. Wow.
So getting those checked, those would be the key things. And then efficiency-wise, having a system that's running efficiently. So during our maintenance program, like we check the amp draws on the different electrical components to make sure they're inside specification. So for example, if a motor's meant to pull half an amp, as that is aging and getting ready to die, that can be pulling 1 amp, 1.5 amps. So it's consuming a lot more energy than one that's inside specification.
Okay. What do you think about home warranties? Do they serve a good purpose, you think?
I'm going to say we don't work with them here. Mm-hmm. There are mixed feedback. So we don't work with them because we say the focus is on doing it low cost. And I'm being general here for home warranty companies. That's what we experience coming through the phone. So that's where we don't work with them. Here my focus more what's the right thing to do, and then give the client options around that, but not just hey, let's put another piece of bubble gum and duct tape on it and keep it going for a while. So that's where it's not a fit for my core values or intrinsics of where I want to go. Some homeowners talk highly of their home warranty and have those companies take care of stuff. So they may use us for maintenance and then use home warranty company for repairs. Mm-hmm. Some companies then clients call us back because the home warranty company won't take care of the system or won't look after it. So will you come and sort it out, or the people they sent out to solve the problem couldn't get it? So will you come and help us out? So
is that hard to do when you are working on something and then you know that someone else has already looked at it and worked on it too, I guess?
It doesn't make it easier, has that?
Sure.
I would say it can make it more it depends what that other person did, if that makes. So it's a bit like, I don't know, you take your car into a dealership because you hear a noise. Did that dealer just listen and say, yeah, we don't know what it is, take it to the next garage? Or did someone get in there and start removing things and put them back with missing bolts, or maybe assembled back to front? So I would say that latter then is going to be much more difficult for that next mechanic to get to the root cause and solve the problem. So it's a bit like that in the HVAC world.
Right. Any new trends happening in the HVAC world, do you see?
Always trends or whatever. So there is never a dull moment. So a couple of emerging trends. So first thing that's been in the works for a while. So there is the ongoing phase out of the R22 Freon.
Okay.
Those that have it in the system are probably aware of it. It's
Can you explain what that is? Yeah.
It's the Freon, or the refrigerant that runs through to transfer the heat from the inside to the outside, or vice versa in the winter.
And what's the genesis for why they're transferring it out?
So it was to save the environment, or the ozone layer. So that was manufacturing stopped. I think it was 3 years ago now. Sorry, I'm pulling a blank on when it stopped. So that's in phase out. So it's no longer manufactured. It's just the recycled R22. So once it gets captured, we send it back again to some people that we'll say process that. It gets recycled then back into clean R22. So the price is, like, I don't know, it's climbing higher than gasoline. How's that? It's just on an upward climb or whatever. So as that becomes rarer and rarer, it's just going to continue to get more expensive. So that's one thing that's already in the works, but it's something that's out there.
What is replacing it, I guess?
I would say it was replaced back on new systems that got manufactured from, I believe, 2005, 2006, somewhere back in that range. It got switched over to the new Freon.
Okay.
So 410A is the current Freon. There's just some really old systems out there, or commercial properties, that have that Freon in there. The other emerging trend is what we call mini splits or ductless. So the US, we have the big boxes that sit outside, have the furnaces or the air handlers inside our homes. The rest of the world runs on what we call ductless systems. So you see those mini splits on the wall. I'm trying to think, some people have them in the garage, their bonus rooms. Those are becoming more of a trend, and that they're growing each year, whatever. So
do you know what's causing that, do you think?
I would say they're more efficient, so the cost is, we'll say, coming down while the price of the others are increasing. So at some point there's going to be a crossover. New construction going to be putting those in as the norm, but I would say that's an emerging trend where there's going to be whole home ductless systems. So
do you find that it cools the house or heats the house just as effectively, I guess?
Yes. It's going to be, we'll say, more efficient. So using, we'll say, industry jargon or whatever, typical system at the moment is, say, 14 SEER. A mini split ductless will be 22, 25 SEER. So that's a seasonally adjusted efficiency ratio. So the higher the number, the more efficient that unit is. But the other key thing with the mini splits or the ductless, it's the area that it's providing that it heats and cools. So you can switch it off and it'll stop heating and cooling that area. So you can have one room at 80 degrees and another room down at 68, 70 degrees. So it gives you very much room by room control over the temperature.
And currently you can't really get that unless you have different units outside for different parts of the house?
Yes, and even then it's a bigger area, like your master suite maybe on a different system versus upstairs or downstairs. So majority of homes that we service probably have 2 systems in there, and the house is sort of split into. A lot of homes have 1 system, so you can have the home set at pretty much one temperature. Even if you have a thing called a zoning system in your home, it's still going to be within 2 to 3 degrees across your home.
I see. Awesome.
So that's an emerging trend. We'll see that, I don't know, sometime over progressing. No one knows when it's going to tip, and that's going to become the norm. Maybe 10 or so years, plus or minus, but it's growing in popularity each year. And then the other thing that's, we'll say, not far over the horizon, there are, we'll say, industry changes. So for next year, so the minimum SEER level in Texas has been 14 SEER for the last few years. The Department of Energy have got changes coming out next year, which changes the testing procedure. So we'll say energy efficiency rating test is basically going to move everything down 1. So if you have a 14 SEER today in the 2023 language, that's going to be 1 SEER lower. And then we'll say the 14 SEER is getting phased out next year on straight AC systems. So there's a number of, we'll say, efficiency changes coming next year.
I see.
And then there's
all this is to make the environment better?
Yes, okay. It's to make the environment better. It would just improve energy efficiency.
I see.
And then we've got the ever-present, I'll call it COVID supply chain. So making sure we've got equipment, unfortunately, where we'll say things are lining up with microchips, global supply chains, we're probably looking at another year of shortages on components.
How much does that affect your ability to service clients?
I would say a lot.
Okay.
So for example, this summer, on the train front, they were having a lot of supply chain issues. But in terms of that mid-range system efficiency, we call it 16 SEER. So the lead time on those was 3 to 4 months. So like some units we ordered in May, we didn't get them here until September. So,
oh, wow.
So, it was like, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we can offer you this 14 SEER, we can give you a 17 SEER, or we can give you a different brand. But that's what we have in our cupboard and what we can get. Some of them didn't want that, and went with other companies that potentially had bigger inventories set up. So that has been a challenge in servicing clients over the year. In terms of individual components, for the most part, it's been good. I'd say probably 60% of the components we've been able to get fairly quickly in the Metroplex. Then there's the next wave that we can get shipped in from a different part of the state, pull stuff in from different parts of the states, and then there's been the handful where there's none available in the country.
Oh, wow.
We've got to wait for a batch to come in from wherever.
Oh, wow. So do you find yourself having to pre-order stuff and spend money and hope that you're able to service and sell the component? Yeah.
So this year, there's so many components you can order on the installation side. So we'll say, so there's a lot of smaller components that maybe most people wouldn't think about. So whenever we change out, the most important day of an AC's life is day number 1, making sure it's set up, it's clean, it's ready to look after your home. But there's things like silicone that we put a bead around the electrical disconnect on the outside, keep water from intruding in there. So at one point they were in short supply in the Metroplex, so we bulked up, and I pulled, I think there was some in Atlanta, so we pulled a bunch out of Atlanta. There was the R22 that I mentioned earlier, that was in short supply, so one of our suppliers was out of it for 4+ months, so I was grabbing, canisters and jugs of that where I could get it. Some of the metal components, metal strap, that was coming and going. A thing called electrical whips, so the electrical lead that goes from the disconnect box on the outside of the wall into the unit, that ran into short supply. I got a heads up that was going to run out, so I bought 3 months supply of those, which just got us there in the end before things came back. So what I've found this year, whatever's been the worst year, every week there's another, I'll call it minor part that's going into short supply. So being, we'll say, attentive to that, staying in touch with suppliers to find out what's going tight, give me a heads up.
Yep.
And then, hey, by the way, this is getting low, so we'll order heavy on those. Capacitors has been another component this year that's been in, we'll say, spotty or tight supply, so it's been getting the heads up. So capacitor is a bit like a battery that fits inside one of your units. It's one of those regular field parts where if your system's not working, it can be that a portion of the time. So we've got a number of those on the shelf, but those were going into short supply as well. So it's been a game of whack-a-mole.
Right. So how much of your time is spent hustling and getting in touch with suppliers and making those connections, I guess?
Too much. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting better at it. I would say, first year of COVID, it was probably 6 to 8 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And then it was probably 8 hours a day. What was it 2021? This year, we've got it down to 2-ish hours a day, and then I've got some of the team that help me out chase some of those things as well.
And it wasn't like that before COVID?
No, it was there was still peaks and troughs or whatever, but if you needed components, you could get them.
Right.
Or if part of equipment wasn't available, it was available somewhere in the US, and you could have things in a few days.
Right. Wow. And so if we switch back to the customer side, whenever you engage, if I'm a customer and I engage with a new HVAC company, what are some of the things I should look out for, aside from the fact that they're licensed and insured? Are there any qualities you think that differentiate a good one from a bad one, I guess?
I have my personal opinion, however. Yep. I would say, for me or whatever, come back, so, how do they dress and so forth? That's important to me. We'll say, so part of the other thing that we do is, we'll communicate what's your arrival window, so you get those notifications ahead of time.
Right.
So that, we'll say, it's a two-way thing. It saves us showing up at a home and someone forgetting. So going from paper-based to having those reminders going out. So that's one thing we do that some of our clients really like.
And you text them, right? Or do you call?
All the above.
Okay, sure. Awesome.
That way you're trying to hit all scenarios. Some people like to work in different channels, but I'm getting off down a different rabbit hole. And then whenever our technician is going, they'll what we call dispatch. That way you'll get a bio and a picture of the person that's come into your door.
Nice.
They're on our website as well, so people can triangulate. I know some people do. I've heard by technicians, I walked into the house and my picture's up there on the computer. Can you get my picture changed? Because I don't like that. I don't like that picture. So that's that sort of front end client community, and we call them on the way as well. That way, you've heard the voice, you've heard it, you've seen a photo. Hopefully that helps alleviate some of that anxiety of who's coming to my home. Your thing then is, talk to the client, ask them, do they have any problems, issues, rather than, just knock the client over at the front door and where's your unit, and then rush back out again. ask if there's any problems ish, so we understand, because maybe there's an area that's too hot, too cold, maybe there's noises, what are those things? So if we don't ask, you'll never find out until you're potentially out the door or whatever. Oh, by the way, can you tell me about this? So try and get all of that covered up front, that way you can take it into effect whenever you're there with a client. Then in addition to that, if there's any, I don't know, problems, issues, identified, what needs to be done, what should be done, and then ideally what should be done. That way it's giving people options. If you don't want to put much time, money, or etc. into it, here's what you need to do. And maybe that's changing the filters. Maybe there's a rusty drain pan, or something's not up to code and could create damage to your home. It's like, make the homeowner aware of that. Some people like that. And then potentially, if that system is high amps and so forth, is it time that we should think about a different solution there to keep it running efficiently? So right. It's trying to give people those options, answer questions. So the other bit I missed out there was make sure you educate people. So here's why you should be doing a maintenance. Oh, you need a new blower motor. Here's what the blower motor does inside the unit. Here's what it's doing. Maybe it's dirty and the blower wheel looks like a dead cat, so it's not moving enough air. Take people with you, show them not everybody wants to go in the attic, but those that want to go in the attic and have a look at it, go walk them through it. Sad people like me, seeing is believing, so I need to be walked through it and let me touch it. So whatever those clients need to do to be comfortable,
sure.
And walk them through that process. And then being able to be available if someone's got questions. My team again can answer any of those questions after, if someone wants to think about it.
Okay, so if you don't know much, obviously most of us don't, about AC units, do you have any, it's a general question, but how do you know if the company you're working with is pushing for too much to do instead of what should be done? Is there any things you can look out for, do you think? I'm
going to say, do they list? So going back to my personal experience or whatever, covering that in a nutshell. So the first experience I had in Cleveland was whenever my wife just brought our youngest son home from hospital. It was Cleveland, so it wasn't Dallas hot, but it was still comparatively hot. But the unit died on the outside, so at that time I had no idea about HVACs. At that point we couldn't get anybody on the phone. It was July 5th, which is hot Cleveland standard, but couldn't get anybody to answer the phone. Those that would answer, didn't have anybody available for weeks, weren't really interested. We did get someone to come out who did a Band-Aid fix, charges a bunch of money, and it died 2 days later. So that's, and I think back at the time he was some sort of, I can't even remember getting a full invoice from him or whatever, but I didn't get walked through. No one mentioned, hey, you need to do maintenance on these things. Here's what happened that killed it. At that time that unit was 2 years old, but I didn't even know I had a warranty, so there was no, do you have warranty paperwork? Walking people through things like that. Wasn't dressed very well, didn't explain things, so that was one lookout that stayed with me. The company that I did get to come in had to replace the outdoor unit. They bent over backwards. They came late. It was like, I'm sorry, this has happened. That would say certain OEM is closed at the moment, but I think we've got a scratch and dent back at the office. We can try and get it in here tonight. So totally different sort of feel, very personable, walking us through stuff. then whenever I moved here to Dallas, I moved into an older home. I knew I was living on borrowed time with that unit. I didn't want to repeat my Cleveland experience again in the middle of the Dallas summer, especially if I was going to be on the road somewhere in a factory or a hotel far away. So trying to get through that. So when we found it was frustrating because a number of the companies we called is like, is your husband going to be there? No, he's traveling. Well, we can't come out then. Well, can you come out on a Saturday or a Sunday? No, we don't work weekends. So we were sort of in a catch-22 for a while. And my wife, she's raised 3 kids, so she's more than capable of making a decision and moving stuff forward. So that was one of the things, after a period of time, we were able to, some of those companies called back and said, oh, we can come out at the weekend or find some other companies. But then I was looking for a higher end efficient unit. I wanted to save some energy, which, back at the time or whatever, I think made sense. I would just think, because my electric bill was huge on that old inefficient unit, so I wanted to bring the electricity. So I was quite insistent on what I was looking for, but I kept getting proposals back. No, you don't want that. Here's what I have in my house, or no, you don't want that. Here's this other thing. It's like, listen, this is what I want, or can you convince me why I don't want that? It was falling on deaf ears and was getting frustrated. In the end, there was one company that sort of listened and said, yeah, we can do that, and got that, and that was the company that we worked with. So that was something else that struck with me. There was another time I had a maintenance tech learning the hard way as well, that you should do some maintenance. So we had a maintenance technician come out to the house. I was looking around for HVACs at the time, so spend some time at home. So I remember a technician showing up in an unmarked van, no tools.
Oh, wow.
Popped into the house. Hey, I'm here to do your maintenance. Where's your unit? It's in the attic. Okay, I got it. He must have been up there for less than 5 minutes. Everything looks good. Just change your filter. Where's your outdoor unit? Back in 5 minutes. No tools. Everything is good. Probably spent more time on getting the payment than he did inspecting and looking at the unit. So that's where there's maintenance and the different level of maintenance. So that's the other. So it goes back to the original question: how do you feel comfortable? Do you feel that they're looking after you? Do you want them as your trusted advisor?
Right.
I'd say ideally you want someone with you for a period of time. And the reason I say that, if they've looked at your unit a number of times and they're keeping some records, they're going to be able to start to see, are things fading off? Mm-hmm. Part of the stuff my technicians will do is, hey, your unit's still working, it's getting old in the tooth, start thinking about saving up for your replacement. So hopefully we're giving you a heads up, so it's not one of those 4th of July surprises at 2:00 in the morning whenever your AC dies. So try and let people know ahead of time that it's going to die. So if you've got that relationship, with that you've worked with a company for a few years, hopefully you've got a good feeling that they're looking out for you. Do you trust them?
Okay. And how long have you had Southern Comfort now?
I would say coming on, won't be long till it's 6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 1 to 5 years, I guess?
Probably, no hair.
Sure.
I would say, hopefully it's, a bigger company that we can continue to grow and evolve, still keep having fun. Hopefully I've worked myself out of a few more tasks or whatever by then. So my goal ultimately is to work myself out of a job, but there's a way to go yet.
That's awesome. Well, Steve, I think we'll stop there. Thank you so much. A lot of good information. I think people want to hear this, especially if you want to be a technician or you're dealing with an AC company. So thank you again.
No problem. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.